I am so excited to have the notorious SBK in the studio with me today. Actually, AKA Scott. Scott, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm super excited to get on this Maslow sailboat with you.
Oh, yay. I love that. I love your spirit so much. I appreciate that. I'm glad to be here.
It's a pleasure. Before we dive in, can you just tell my audience about who you are? And I'd love you to tell us what's not in your bio and what motivates you. Like, what gets your sailboat going?
Oh, boy. What gets my sailboat revved up? Well, first of all, who am I? Well, I mean, I am a humanistic psychologist, so I'm interested in how we can realize our full potential. And I'm interested in people who have talent loss, like kids with learning disabilities. You know, are we really bringing out their best potential? Kids. I'm interested in gifted education, and I'm interested in all people. You know, and all the ways that we block our self-actualization. So that's my research interest in things. I was an opera singer at one point and auditioned for a TV show called American Idol and got rejected twice, and realized that psychology was pretty much the best decision for me.
Wow. Are you going to sing some opera for us today?
I dream a dream that days gone by. I dream a dream that life's worth living.
Oh, that's beautiful. Carry on. I think we should just do the podcast with you singing.
Dream that love will never die. Oh, excuse me, that wasn't that good.
Well, okay, so that was great because you told us something that wasn't in your bio. I love that, and I love that.
That's what you asked for.
Yeah, exactly. And we got a demonstration as well. So, okay, so you, as a humanistic psychologist, besides an opera singer, you've dived into getting into Maslow. That you found some hidden pearls of wisdom that were not completed, and you've actually gone ahead in your book and done that. So, can you tell us about this book, Transcend, and what motivated you to write it, and why you've taken Maslow to a whole new level, the science of self-actualization?
People may ask, well, who is Abraham Maslow? Why should I give a shit about Abraham Maslow? I don't know if I want to curse on your podcast, but people might be like, who cares? Like, Scott, calm down about this dude. But here's the thing. I think that in this modern age, it'd be so much more helpful for us to value each person's individual journey to have their own sacredness and uniqueness actualized. Instead, what we see is such a focus on happiness. We put pressure on people to be happy. It's like, no, what if I don't want to be happy? Like, do I have to? Like there's value in being melancholy sometimes, right? There's value in bringing your whole self to the table. And we also focus a lot on achievement and you see the phrase high performance all the time. No offense if you use that word a lot on your own podcast, but people are always talking about like high performance. And I wanted to revive a lot of the thinking of the humanistic psychologists in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s who talked about things such as peak experiences and social action and responsibility and self-actualization and creativity and realizing your full potential and growing. And growth was the goal, not achievement or even happiness, momentary fleeting moments of happiness. So I really wanted to bring back these ideas. I really fell in love with them when I first discovered the writings of the humanistic psychologist Abraham Maslow, but also a lot of other humanistic psychologists during that period. Really thought that their way of talking about human nature was really spot on and needed in such a polarized world that we live in. And then even now with this coronavirus, not just polarized, but in some ways we've actually united as a species. We went from being polarized to now we're all just scared of the same thing.
Yeah. And also to go to that point, we're all facing a common enemy. We're coming together. There's so much more deep, meaningful connections. So
that's exactly right.
Related to the work that you're doing and what you've written in the book. So this book, so carry on. I like what you're saying. So you were attracted to the philosophy of the humanistic psychologists in the 1340s. And so that was much more of an emphasis on not just looking for this externalization of constantly wanting to be happy and not have any sadness, which is very much a thing today, to get back to much more of a deeper embrace process. That's one of the things I teach all the time is embrace, process, reconceptualize. I do clinical trials, and your brain is not designed to just be an avatar. You are supposed to be very deep thinking, and it's part of your growth. And that's why I like your work, because I think we're talking the same language.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I'm glad that you get it. But this field of psychology today, and even neuroscience research, is very reductionistic.
Very.
It takes a very a particular slice of who we are and treats that as though that's all there is to that human. So you bring someone in, you scan their brain. Let's see what happens. What's IQ correlated with in the brain? What brain areas are intelligence? And each of us, we're a lot more than our IQ score. We're a lot more than our Tagasha, more than my dorsolateral prefrontal cortex activation, because I don't got much of that activation anyway. So I hope I'm more than that.
I agree with you.
Judged on that.
Trying to reduce us down to complex human emotions down to a biological correlate is just not the way to do it. I've written so much about that and teach so much about that too. And as one of the reasons in my clinical trials I've just done, I actually had a look at across the board. The brain doesn't tell you, it doesn't produce the mind, it responds to the mind. So we've got to look at us as a unique human. And I looked from the narrative, the psychology, the physiology, the neurophysiology. And what was you said something earlier on that just triggered the reason I'm telling you this is you said we've got to look at each person's unique individual. You said something along those lines. And that's one of the things that I pushed in our analysis is to look at everyone as an individual case study, because I'm trying to also come against this current trend which has been going on for about 30 to 60 years now, of reducing everyone down to just biological correlates and go away from and just trying to generalize and say your brain looks like this, therefore this is depression, as though it's some illness or an it. It's not. It's a signal of a story, and we each individual case studies. And that's why I think I was very attracted to your work, because you talk a lot about the individual. I just told you about your book. Now you tell us about your book.
No, you told me a lot about you. You told me a lot about you and the great work that you're doing, and your perspective, which does seem very aligned with my perspective. This book was a real personal journey that I went on for 5 years, trying to scientifically test a lot of these ideas that the humanistic psychologists put forward, because a lot of the humanistic psychologists were dismissed by the field of psychology as poets, not scientists.
That's true.
Why should we listen to them? They're not doing rigorous scientific studies. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to do rigorous scientific studies and show they had a lot of brilliance. And one thing I did is I tested Maslow's writings in the 50s of what are the characteristics of self-actualizing people. And I wondered how many of the characteristics that he proposed would stand up to empirical scrutiny, as they say. And I found 10 characteristics exist. And I put it up free on my website, selfactualizationtest.com. Anyone can go there and find out what their main sources of self-actualization are. And it can range from, maybe authenticity is your root. Maybe that's your thing where you really value being, and I define authenticity, by the way, as not as saying whatever's on your mind whenever you want. That's just being an asshole. I define authenticity as actually staying true to your values in environments that challenge them. To me, a true test of authenticity is when you're challenged, not when it's easy.
I like that.
Thank you. And I talk about creativity as a root to self-actualization and concern for your fellow humans, humanitarianism, and appreciation of, it's called newness of appreciation. So, appreciating something you see over and over again every day, but yet still being able to recycle that gratitude for it, not always having gratitude for new things, but being able to cherish your partner, even if you feel like you get them, or you're always going to discover new depths of their being, right? So
yes. Oh, I love that. Okay, so if you had to describe yourself in terms of this newly tasted, like filling in the gaps, because I see in your book you talk about the filling it, that's almost like the unfinished. It's not a pyramid. I start with that. Everyone knows it's as a pyramid, but you say it's not a pyramid, and there's a lot of unfinished stuff, and it's actually more like a sailboat. And I thought that analogy was really good. And then tell us about you and those needs. I'd like to hear that.
What you mean about me and my own needs?
In terms of
my needs.
Exactly. I want to, because that's practical, so people can understand. Because if you've worked in this, you've got this in your head about how this works. So tell us about the pyramid versus the sailboat versus the pyramid, because I think most people are familiar with the pyramid.
Most people are.
Even if they didn't know it was Maslow, they know that there's a pyramid of needs. Yeah,
they've seen it diagrammed on Facebook with toilet paper at the bottom.
Exactly.
Or like
at the top or bottom, or both, all the way through.
Wi-Fi, the toilet papers get stuck.
Yeah,
but
it's on every level. There's a toilet roll.
Every single level. You might see it with Wi-Fi or battery at the bottom as well. Like that's the most essential need. But whatever the iteration, the general idea is that life is some sort of like video game or something where you have increasing levels of needs, and that you need to satisfy a level before you can go to the next level. So, you need to satisfy your need for like food, safety, water, and then connection and love and belonging. And then if you can do that, then some voice from above is like, congrats, you've unlocked self-esteem. And then you can go up to the self-esteem level. And then if you have your self-esteem satisfied, then you, to a certain reasonable degree, then you can really focus on self-actualization, becoming all that you're uniquely capable of becoming. Well, Maslow, who was credited for that, never actually drew a pyramid. And it was actually management textbooks in the 60s, a bunch of white men who decided to put actually start off as a staircase. It actually was the first depiction of it I found was staircase with the man at the top with the flagpole.
That's hilarious.
The man self-realized.
I've done it. You're like, I can put my flag on top of the mountain, and I'm done now. And now what? Now what? Yeah.
Yeah. Now you're going to be depressed. Now
exactly.
Depression will set in.
Yeah.
but
jump off the mountain.
Yeah, there you go. And then people as well into a pyramid. Well, it just never was a pyramid. And Maslow, if you look at his writings, which I did at an unhealthy obsessive level, I looked at his writings. But what I found is that not only did he not draw a pyramid, but he really believed that human development was a constant 2-step forward, 1-step back dynamic. He argued ultimately we need to choose growth. But he acknowledged that the fear option is always so prevalent in our lives. In a lot of ways, it's more enticing to us than the growth option. Growth requires getting out of your comfort zone. Growth, it's easy to fear things, right? As a neurotic Jew, I fear everything, but it's easy to fear. But you have to choose growth over and over again, the growth option. You know what? Yeah. I'm going to consciously talk to this person, even though I'm terrified to do so. I'm going to stick my neck out and risk looking stupid by doing something that I love, but knowing that, it's the only way I'm going to grow. So Maslow, that's what he really emphasized. So I think the sailboat actually encapsulates that much better, because with a sailboat, you have the boat that you need to have secure to a certain degree, but it illustrates the fact that security alone is not enough for a full life. If you really want to explore the world, explore the sea, the vast unknown of the sea, you need to open that sail eventually and become vulnerable and open yourself to the wind, to the potential waves that may come down. When you're sailing, you never know when there's going to be rocky storms, but you still move. You're constantly growing and moving. And I think the sailboat kind of has both those components to it.
I love that. So there's the unpredictability in amongst the little bit of predictability and the change that can occur at any one moment, and you've got to be able to adapt to the change. So Maslow's whole thing was growth, but you've done more. You've taken it to another level.
I took it to, even though we don't use the word level anymore, but
oh yes, you're not supposed to use level. I forgot. Another way.
But I did. I did. No, but I like the way you used it. Actually, I took Maslow to the next level. I like that. So yeah, I have my own theory. Some people were like, they suggested that I had too much Maslow in my book. That maybe I should have just just been like, this is my theory. I'm a big fan of giving credit where it's due.
Yeah, and we all build on the giants of the shoulders of the giants who come before.
That.
Yeah,
yeah,
I agree
but
with
you don't see that a lot in a lot of self-help books. You don't see that. If you you read self-help books, they act as though what I'm saying.
They've invented it.
They're like emotional intelligence 4.0.
It's like no one's ever heard of this before, but meanwhile, it's everything you've just heard repackaged in another way. Yeah.
Yeah. So you get it. We're on the same.
I get it.
So I didn't want to be that guy, and I wanted to show that I really was influenced deeply by the humanistic thinkers, but I did scientifically test to give myself some credit to. I've done a lot of studies and argue that we need a better discussion of the needs. Instead of self-actualization as a need, I break it down into 3 concrete needs: the need for exploration, the need for love and universal love, and the need for purpose. And I think those 3 work synergistically together. They work together in concert to help us self-actualize. We can't really grow to our full heights unless we have some aspect of those 3.
Can you give that in a practical example? Either like I was trying to get you to tell you about, about your own life, or just a general example of what does it look like? What does that look like? Sorry.
Well, some of these needs, they come apart and not become integrated, and that disintegration is when the real problem happens. So let's say like people ask me like, was Hitler self-actualized? Well, he had a purpose, but he didn't have love for humanity. Well, maybe he did for the fellow Germans, but not. He certainly didn't have love for the Jews.
No, exactly.
Or cripples, or homosexuals. Okay, so he didn't have a general, a deep abiding love for humanity. He wasn't trying to raise the tide for everyone. I think the integration is what's important, and which is why when we talk about some of these needs stripped of the context, like transcendence is an interesting one. There are a lot of people who are pseudo-transcending. You see all these yoga pictures on Instagram, whatever, and these people are some of them are depressed as all heck. But, you can't just expect that a yoga downward dog pose is going to cure your deep
depression.
Insecurities. It's the integration. When yoga you can be integrated into a culture where you have connections with others, where you I'm not hating on yoga. I want to be very clear.
No. You're putting it in context. It's not the solution.
Context. Yeah. Anyone who just tries to find one thing they think will satisfy all their needs is there's a recipe for disaster.
And that's very problematic. Sorry to interrupt you, but that's very problematic in the current wellness space, where it's like mindfulness meditation is the answer, or yoga is the answer, or diet is the answer. Nothing is the answer, because as you said in the beginning, it's our uniqueness, and there's so many options and combinations, but it's the integration. If I'm hearing you correctly, the growth will come from the integration.
You're hearing me very correctly. You're hearing me loud and clear. So the ultimate is to have a base of exploration where you aren't scared of growth. You aren't fearful. You're moving towards the unknown with excitement. And that's what drives you, is that spirit of exploration as a base, built upon a love for humanity, built upon some specific meaning or a higher level goal or calling that you feel like you have. When those 3 are integrated together, then you start self-actualizing as a whole unit, as a whole person. Self-actualization is about becoming a whole person. Self-actualization is not about just actualizing one tiny bit of yourself.
And that process is lifelong, isn't it? And to become a whole person is an ongoing
Absolutely.
journey.
Not an achievement.
Yeah,
it's not a level. It's not a level to achieve. That's why I axed it as one of the needs, and I broke it down into 3 things, because self-actualization will emerge from that.
And it will change. Yes, it's not a finite point. It's an infinite growth process where it's continually growing all the time. So if that looked like, in terms of just bringing that back to your book, that obviously your motivation behind the book, I can just see those 3 things coming together. Your love of humanity, whatever, is kind of your motivational behind the book. Yes or no? I mean, how could you, obviously this is your baby, so that there's a purpose there. So tell me how you've taken those 3 aspects and how to produce this this book that you love? Because you
Yeah,
love this information.
Yeah, I do. I think that.
I'm making you think now.
Well, you've been making me think since the beginning of this interview. But I mean, self-actualization has different paths. Like I said, you can take the test. I tend to score very high in the truth-seeking one, and also pretty high in authenticity and creative spirit. I was motivated a lot by my excitement to share with people the real accurate science of how they can live a life of deep fulfillment and creativity and peak experiences. And because there's a lot of, like, Father, you would call it dreck out there. There's a lot of dreck out there, you know, and I don't know if anyone ever uses that word anymore.
No, I think it's a great word though.
Yeah, I think it might be Yiddish. But anyway, there is a lot of that, a lot of crap.
Yeah. I like it.
And I want people
Drake, I'm going to use it now.
I really wanted to tell the truth about what it really takes, and to make clear there's no hacks. There's no. I didn't write a book. Here are the 5 hacks to self-actualization.
Yeah.
Please smack me if I ever say that. if I ever write an article that title. I'm gonna
watch now. Make sure you don't bring a book out that's called that.
Yeah. The 5 hacks.
5 hacks to self-actualization.
Yeah, no, because that's the point. That's not the point. The point is that you need to find out how you want to live your life in your own way, on your own terms. I do think that I'm very open-minded. I appreciate people who have all different sorts of lifestyles and ways of self-actualizing. I didn't write a book to tell you how you should do it. It was a book to help give you the tools so that however direction you want to go in, at least you have the boat that is secure and the sail that feels safe to open. But besides that, go let your freak flag fly, as they say. Why not? Life is short.
Absolutely. It kind of reminds me of Dan Buttner's work. This is the Blue Zones. I interviewed him recently, and I love his stuff. And it's fantastic. And how the common to have a purpose, to have that's the things you've described seem to be encapsulating one of the main driving forces of people living longer, which is that spiritual and then that purpose, to have a purpose, and then the community. Those 3 things were very much the top 3 reasons why people lived longer. And so it wasn't about having all that money in the bank and all the kind of way that we've defined success, at this day and age. So am I correct in understanding that you're trying to help people redefine success as a more innate kind of sense of being, as opposed to accumulation of goods?
Well, for sure. Being happy with what you have versus being endlessly desiring new possessions. Letting things grow and grow in meaning to you that you already have, or else nothing will grow in meaning if everything is new.
You've got to be able to take the old and recycle and find deeper meaning and more uses for it.
Yeah. Or else you'll just be perpetually dissatisfied.
Take that further before I ask you this question. You're never going to be satisfied. I like that. Just explain why. Why won't people ever be satisfied? And I know they know this logically, but
well, that's built into the human DNA that we are always seeking more, higher levels of motivation. We may obsess over a new TV and trying to find the perfect TV. We get the TV the next day. We forgot about it. It's like all the months of obsessing over finding the perfect TV, and then it's like we forgot about it after a day.
Yeah.
And we tend to treat people like possessions too. So we will maybe have a partner, and then passion wanes in their relationship, and they take each other for granted, and they start to treat each other like possessions, that you have, as opposed to a human being who's in a state of growth. And so you take that for granted. So it's really part of our nature. And I don't deny human nature. I just try to figure out ways that we can transcend, shall I say, our lower needs, so that we can reach a more spiritual level of consciousness that's more mindful and open to experiences and grateful and aware, alive. To be fully alive is a great goal.
I love that. And that's what the humanistic psychologists were very focused on in the 30s and 40s was that. And there was this move for the last 30, 60 years to in this reductionistic approach, as you mentioned. And now there's a definite shifting and an awareness back because it's not satisfying and it hasn't worked. It's causing mental health problems. That's why I do this podcast, Cleaning Up the Mental Mess. I mean, a lot of it's coming from not really getting deep enough into who we are. One of the parts of my research is I developed a theory 30 years ago, and then we spend the rest of our life trying to understand.
But you're like 30 years old right now.
I've been working in this field for 38 years now already.
No, are you serious?
I'm serious.
Oh my gosh.
So it was about almost 30 years ago, I developed this theory in the research I was doing, which focused on understanding the non-conscious mind, which is that spiritual part of us, that biggest part of us, that 99% part of us, the part that's been literally ignored for the last 30 to 60 years with this focus on reductionism. And I've always been in the world of linking it to brain science. I was told, I've actually done a TED talk on this, I was told that it was a ridiculous question to try and investigate that your mind can actually, the non-conscious mind is actually filled with intelligence. It's not just this robotic thing and whatever. So just to come back to your point is when I read your book, I felt like I was connecting with that deep part of myself. And that's what we've got
Wonderful.
to revive, and we've got to pull that back out. And we see that with the brain scans, when people think deeply, when they start trying to challenge themselves to understand these deeper things and go more spiritual, your brain responds, and it goes into like an incredibly high intelligence state. You get all the brain waves flowing, like you've got water in the background there. You get all the waves, the delta and theta wave, which are these waves that are in the depths of the sea. That's what you want, these healing waves, and you're connecting with the deeper part of you, and you become a different kind of person when you function like that. And that excites me. So based on that little bit of explanation, you say we don't have to choose between self-development or self-sacrifice. At the highest level of human potential, we experience a deep integration of both. Talk about that.
What does it mean to be selfish when what is good for you, what excites you, what lights you up is simultaneously good for others and the world? There's not such a separation between self and others. The word selfishness does have meaning when there's a huge gulf between what you're interested in and what is good for others. But when there isn't, what does that word mean anymore? I think that being able to have such a harmonious integration within yourself, not only within yourself, where you're not fighting a war within yourself anymore with all these different sides of yourself, but also a great harmony between your whole self and the world. Well, that's the ultimate level of integration. When there's that connection with the world, what gives you joy doing day in and day out gives others people joy all the time. And that's the way to do it. You don't need to self-sacrifice. I think that there's too much, I think it's unhealthy how much sometimes young people, especially young girls, are pressured to self-sacrifice, and they never develop assertiveness skills or come into touch with their own real needs and desires and self-actualization potential, because they're always helping others and doing things for others. And you do see that a lot of young women, and it can develop into disorders and things. And I think that's really a shame. I mean, I think that one of the most heartbreaking things is to become an adult and live your life entirely based on what Karen Horney called the tyrannical shoulds of your lives.
Tyrannical shoulds, yeah. Because if you sacrifice self-sacrificing, but you're not self-developing at the same time, there's a big gap. And that's what's manifesting with that growing into adulthood as that lack of that sort of angst.
That's exactly right. I'm publishing a paper. I just got accepted, so it'll be out in a couple of weeks.
Wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you. But I created a new scale called Healthy Selfishness Scale. And it'll be on my website, my self-actualization test website, so anyone can take the test. But I showed in this paper that those who score high on items like I like to meditate, exercise. I love to bring myself pleasure, even if it's not necessarily, bringing other people pleasure. Like I have a lot of self-care. I have a lot of healthy assertiveness in my boundaries. I can say no when it's important, called healthy selfishness. That was correlated with a lot of positive things, including pro-social motivations, including, people who take care of themselves tend to also want to help others in a healthy way. And I found that was a positive thing. And then we created another scale in the same paper we called it pathological altruism. People who feel an obsessive need to always help others. We found that was correlated with depression and correlated with low self-esteem and lots of bad things. So we wanted to make a point in this paper that not all selfishness is bad and not all altruism is good.
But it's the balance.
Bingo.
Okay, so give us an example. Translate this into a day-to-day example.
Well, this like the items on the scale would be an example. So like if you have a pathological need to help others, maybe you're the type of person like you need to be needed. Like you need for others, you need to do things for others in order for you to feel good about yourself. You know, and that's not healthy. That's not a real genuine motive for helping. And also those people, we found they tend to help people when the people don't even really want the help. You know, it's really selfish. It's
you do it to make yourself feel good as opposed to you satisfying that.
Not everything that is altruism is not selfish. That was a lot of knots.
That makes sense. So what should that person be doing instead? They need to recognize it obviously first. But what should they be doing? How could they
cultivate a little bit more healthy selfishness in their lives? A little more, you know what? I'm going to binge watch on Netflix with wine tonight, and I have no shame over that whatsoever. Yeah.
And text all your friends and say, I'm not going to listen to you. I'm going to Netflix binge and drink my wine.
Away message. Put an away message on your text. I don't know if you can do that. I want to do that. And not feel a compulsive need to say yes to every request to help someone. Part of becoming free, a free self-actualized human being, becoming a whole person, a big part of that process is having the flexibility to make your choices not under compulsion, not under, you know, the feeling of like, I must do this, or I have to do this, or else I'm a bad person. It's having a real expression of your real, genuine drive. So when you have a real, you know, really listen to yourself and listen to your intuition, and when you feel like a real big drive to help someone, you care about the person, do it. But when you don't, and there's a voice telling your head, but I should, no, give yourself permission to say no. Yeah.
So there's the key there. There's the little key thing is that if there's that voice in your head, and I'd call it the prompting from the non-conscious to the subconscious to, I should be doing this. I feel bad. I feel guilty. But actually all you want to do is go binge on Netflix because you actually just need a break because you've just been running after. You need to actually some me time. And that's when if you ignore that, it's damaging to your psyche, to your physical, to your brain, to everything. But if you do that, and now you may get a reaction because people are so used to you always being the one who says yes, they'll do it. But you've got to be strong against that reaction, don't you?
You have to be very strong. You have to do some self-assertion skills. You know, like training. Say yes to yourself. You know?
I like that. So that's where the selfishness is healthy.
Yes. And I mean, I'm not saying that. I'm not getting all Ayn Rand on you.
No.
You know what I'm saying? No. Like there is unhealthy selfishness.
Yes.
I'm not saying, but we distinguished that in our paper. We looked at healthy selfishness and its distinction with unhealthy selfishness, with healthy altruism versus unhealthy altruism.
Okay,
it's a very nerdy paper, Dr. Caroline.
Well, it sounds great. It sounds like one I want to read. But now translate that into two. Just define them. Explain for the viewers and the listeners who may not read the paper or who may read it.
Well, unhealthy selfishness was like narcissism. So you can have an excessive self-focus where you never think about others. And that's unhealthy.
That's not good.
I mean, I'm not. It's not what I'm advocating. I'm not saying you just have excessive self-focus. You know, and you can have healthy altruism for sure where you have a real expression of a desire to want to help someone. You know, like you love someone or you care about someone. You want to reduce their suffering. That's a great thing. I'm not saying it's not a great thing, but all these things have unhealthy flavors to them. You know, and healthy flavors. And like I already talked about what healthy selfishness looks like, you know, it's not excessive self-focus, but it's self-care. It's valuing the freedom, integrity, and worth of yourself.
Do you think people take enough time to investigate what that is, or are we living under what you said, the should have? You said something with the should have, which was very funny.
That's tyrannical shoulds.
Tyrannical shoulds. That do you think we're so conditioned by society, by these tyrannical shoulds, that we're really battling to give ourselves that good selfishness, which is that mental self-care or whatever you want to call it? I mean, there's a multitude of different things.
We're social animals. And of course, it's very tempting because we want to look good to others. We do we say a lot of things maybe on social media because, look how much I'm helping, because we want to be liked. But we have to value the authenticity, integrity, and freedom of ourself as well. And recognize that, the world will survive if you go 2 days on social media without bragging about something you did to help someone.
Exactly.
People won't think less of you. They really won't. And people tend to actually respect people more who respect themselves.
Because it comes through in how they carry themselves and how they speak. Sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, it's exactly what you just said.
That's that authenticity. It's the old saying, isn't it? If you have to push yourself, well, then there's an issue. But if you're just confident in who you are, people are going to see that too, and people are attracted to that.
Yes, confident who you are, but also you love yourself.
I like that.
You have self-respect.
That is really good. The self-respect part, and that really ties in with everything that you've been speaking about in the book, is that self-respect is very, very significant, because with self-respect, you operate differently, don't you? Talk about the self-respect for a minute.
You do. And you can set healthy boundaries and stick to it. For instance, I'll give you an example. I put on my footer now of my emails. I check my emails Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. If you email me outside of that time, you're shit out of luck. I don't care if it's an emergency. I don't care if it's an emergency.
You're not an ER doctor. They can wait till Monday.
Yeah. Unless it's my mom and dad, but they have other ways of contacting me.
Exactly.
But I set the boundary in the footer of your email. It's there. Like, people can't. They're like, but. You're like, no, it's there. I wrote it. And the real courage isn't writing it. The real courage is sticking to your boundaries, and turning off the email after 5 on the weekend. I went this whole weekend, did not check my email once. It felt so good. I woke up this morning. I was like, I had like 100 emails waiting for me, but I was
but you could handle them. Yeah,
I could handle it because I know that there'll be a break. Like I'll be able to have it the next weekend, free.
Exactly.
So you need to give yourself. That's part of healthy selfishness, is giving yourself a built-in balance, for things. So work very hard, but set boundaries in a way that guarantees you'll also have some homeostasis.
Now, all this is coming out of this concept of those 3 factors that are helping you operate in an integrated way in your sailboat.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to ask you another question just to transition. On a more personal level, what are some of the biggest challenges and struggles that you have faced, and how have you overcome them? Answer that in like 3 seconds. No, I'm just joking.
Well,
we'll use that as our wrap-up question, because otherwise you and I are going to get into, like, I feel like we're having one of these philosophical, I feel like we need to be sitting in a coffee shop in Oxford like C.S. Lewis and Tolkien did, and be talking about these things, because there's some really
Amsterdam
cool
having pot brownies.
I think I'll have the coffee in Oxford.
Okay, that's fine.
I've seen those pot brownies in Amsterdam. I've been there.
You've seen them with your eyes.
Yeah, you see, I've seen them.
Yeah. Well, so can you believe it? But people thought I was dumb as a kid. I
can't believe it.
Can you believe it? Because I'm so clearly brilliant, right now.
Absolutely.
But when I was a kid, I was in special education. I had an auditory learning disability, and I was not even college bound. And there was a point in 9th grade, I had a special ed teacher, who saw greater potential in me, but also there was a breaking point where I said, you know what, screw this. I'm going to take care of myself for a change and show people what I'm capable of. And I took myself out of special ed, and I really, applied a lot of grit and determination to show what I was capable, show the school system. And I
Good for
signed up
you.
thank you. I signed up for the orchestra. My grandfather was a cellist with the Philadelphia Orchestra, and he taught me how to play cello.
Wow.
And I joined the school orchestra, and I also joined the choir, got voice lessons, won the All Music Department Award, and then got a scholarship for opera singing.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Gosh, and you did that because you integrated. You didn't realize at that stage that you were doing that, but now in retrospect.
That's right. Yeah.
So your book was birthed out of that experience.
My first book for a general, I wrote called Ungifted. Intelligence Redefined was one of my first books. It was my first book for a general audience. And yeah, I told my personal story, and I talked about how we need a new model of education.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. That's absolutely for sure. Incredible. Well, this has been fascinating. I want to thank you for your perseverance, for giving us such a story of hope. And I'm so glad that you ended with that story, because that is it kind of highlights everything you're trying to say and the reason why people need to become more integrated and plumb the depths and get that unconscious mind working and make that and start sailing your boat. I mean, I think it's fantastic. So how can people find out more about you?
Thanks, Dr. Caroline. Well, the Psychology Podcast. I do the Psychology Podcast. ScottBarryKaufman.com. I have lots of free resources. And I just started to get a little more active on Instagram. So if anyone wants to follow me on Instagram, it's at Scott Barry Kaufman. I promise you won't see me doing any yoga poses.
No yoga poses.
I have uplifting quotes, but no, that's what you'll get from me.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much. And they can get your book all over.
Anywhere.
Right. Okay. So we'll put those links in the show notes as well.
Well,
I want to thank you for your time. And it was so interesting and fascinating. And as I said, you and I could really have a long philosophical discussion. That's for sure. We were going down.
Hopefully someday we could get some coffee then and do that. Yeah.
I think so. Definitely. Well, I normally have my coffee around here somewhere. And post-COVID, we can go for that coffee.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for coming on the show. And thanks for your wisdom. I appreciate it so much. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Have a good day.
Thank you, Scott. Bye.
Bye.